Greetings, everyone, and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of Golarion, the setting for the Pathfinder role-playing game system? If you are, we're heading back to the lands of the Linnorm Kings to learn about another of the lands, Broken Bay today. I, your host and guide here, Tantus Dracovin, will lead you through my gateway through time, space, and the universe, all the way to Golarion once more for us to visit. This one's a relatively safe place, but still could be a little dangerous. So be ready for a fight. We're going to be going in a second. But please do remember to give me a little bit of a tip before we leave, like subscribe to the YouTube side of thing, and let me know your experiences or what you think about Broken Bay. The gate's open. Are you ready to travel? Let's get going. The lands of the Linnorm Kings and Broken Bay awaits. You've arrived. Keep close. The locals won't really like us, and well, at most you might get into a fist fight, but you might not hold a punch. That fist fight goes a little bit deadly. I can't stop it. So keep close, and I'll keep them at bay. Now that we're in the Broken Bay. Now, if you want to look more into Broken Bay, one of your main sources, and my main sources, of course, is the Linnorm Kings book from 1st edition. Not that you can't get a picture of the lands in 2nd edition, but getting into the depths of the certain exact kingdoms within the land of the Linnorm Kings, you really have to go into this book to get into it. And a lot of the details there, to paint the picture of how they are leading into 2nd edition. You can kind of give an approximation of the direction they're heading and, see how things are going. Which brings us to Broken Bay. We got to go over some basics. You can see it all the way over there on the western edge. That's Broken Bay. Off the coast, another island nation like the Ironbound Isles that we talked about in a previous episode. So, on the fringes of the kingdoms, it consists of the water surrounding the islands of Agoth, Orthos, and a lot of uninhabited smaller rocks. The thing is, Agos is only one of these islands that can be, in any retrospect, called civilized. Its capital is Built. Its only other notable settlement is Skjoldmur. I butcher this. Sorry. And its ruler is King Ingimundr the Unruly. Talk about all of these. We'll dive all into all of them. But yes. Broken Bay itself. Home to many schools of fish. Pods of whales. And fishery is the big industry to make a living. The region is notorious for its powerful storms. Its powerful tides. Its currents. Its treacherous shallows. The Broken, part of Broken Bay, refers to all the shipwrecks that are in this area. So yeah, life in the Broken Bay is cold, rough, and people that grow up here are shaped by it. And a lot of people become mercenaries and raiders, plundering other coastal settlements throughout the Inner Sea region. Ingimundr the Unruly, who rules this place from Built, well, Built is the only natural harbor in the region. And he wants to restore Built in its prominence and strength to basically this raiding power, this martial lifestyle, and basically he looks at the sea raiders of his people as the last true bastion of Ulfin culture, and the last true sea raiders of the Linnorm Kings. So this is a very much opposite direction than when we talked about the Ironbound Isles. Go see that episode. Very much opposite direction of taking it. This is going extreme into old Ulfin culture, rather than seeing a way of new and old together. Ships are important here in their civilization, in their society. So, if you look at Broken Bay, it goes back in time in Ulfin history, when plundering the southern lands was a regional pastime and trading was basically restricted to well-defended ports. People here, particularly when they look at places like Hagreach, which are landlocked, they see them as traitors to their ancestors. Raiding and being ship-going is the way of their ancestors. So they assault on Cheliax, Grisia, Nidal, many of the southern nations. And they have also looked to the other Linnorm kingdoms, because they look at those as regional cowards. We can just steal from the cowards. And the shipyards of Built have been turning out many more longboats and fewer fishing goods. So, and a lot of the hearths in the city are filled with young warriors eager to make a name for themselves. Raiding is more fun than fishing, and they have targets to attack. Finding a way to make a living off the unwary, undefended Western Avastian is a challenge in this age. And that's the thing. It's not necessarily undefended. It's not necessarily unwary. And Western Avastian is a lot more developed. So the days where the Ulfin Raiders could just do as they pleased as much is kind of disappearing. So, yeah. So Ingimundr wants to kind of keep his crown, keep his force. He's been encouraging this. And we'll talk about Ingimundr a little bit toward the end of today, so you know more about this person and why he's doing this. But, yeah. When you look at where the citizens of Broken Bay are, most are on the southern shores of Aegos. The city's built, and Skoldmar are your main places with the majority of the population of this place. The majority of its people. There are some small fishing settlements that dot the eastern shore. The uplands of the island, though, are bleak. Windy stretches, and the northwest is completely deserted. The interior is home to a lot of impressive wildlife, and various types of wolves, bears. It's just dangerous. Settlements in the north are always a place of middens and well away from towns for that reason. Always place their middens well away from towns for that very reason. They are dangerous places. There he is. Ignore him himself. Hard, brash. All beneath his boasting, though. He's shrewd. He's calculative. He's manipulative. To example this is the raiding issue. Basically, he's done everything he can to increase Ulfin raiding, which he has achieved by publicly espousing more warlike and traditional lifestyles without explicitly encouraging violence and theft. So he's like, oh, be more of a warrior. Be more traditional. Again, we go to some of the more violent ways of traditional Ulfin society that are from the ancient past when they were just relying on that before they built up cities, before they built up a lot of civilization, and had places they didn't need to do a lot of these things. When raiding was the only way to survive. Guess what? It's not as much anymore. They could just go goddamn fishing. But no! Go ahead! Be a warrior! Be traditional! I'm not mentioning that doesn't mean go raid someone, but I'm implying. So yeah. He's been doing this basically to keep things on the up and up with the other Linnorm kings, especially the more conservative ones. So it's been basically privately encouraging raids, and officially ignores the provenance of goods and gold that enter the port. Hey, it just entered my port. I don't know anything about it. It's just there! So, he has definitely risen to in fame as a place for plunder itself to be entering into the place and into his coffers. He sees the return of the old ways as an end to itself. More power and glory for himself, and basically making Broken Bay the home of the true Ulfin Raider. And raiding has just become so important in this region under his direction. And yes, with this increased importance, this kind of can come into conflict with the other Linnorm Kings. These unsanctioned, unfortunate raids on fellow Linnorm kingdoms, basically, he's hoping it will encourage them also to return to their roots and seek revenge. It'll be a victory for him, too. He's trying to build about these old ways. And so it's, oh, they raided you, you're going to be angry and come back at us and do the same. Aw, you're stooping to our level. Good. Yep. He's a great person to be in charge. Here is, of course, the capital. Biddult, as we know it, and as it's mapped. What do we know about Biddult? Well, and what do we know about the Linnorm Kingdoms? Well, or Broken Bay. It's cold, unforgiving place. Monsters and predators hunt the region. That tend to be large and well insulated. Sea monsters are, of course, in the waters. Giant crabs of all sizes on the shorelines, lying in wait for the unwary. Argos, being the rocky inland there, has not much larger wildlife, but a lot of different types of wolves. And, of course, things that will go after coastal towns and prey upon livestock. And polar bears. And other types of bears in the northern shorelines. So, yeah, there's still dangerous wildlife all around. Built is nestled among 3 rugged basalt crags. It's a natural harbor. It is the second only to Kalsgard for the shipyards that are here. But this, of course, rather than focusing on deep harbors and extensive dock infrastructure, this builds flat, gravelly strands in which longboats reach when not in use. Basically, they build boats that are much better for shallower waters. And deep parts of the harbor are reserved for the very few trading vessels from foreign countries that come into there. But again, those are becoming less and less because of the town's violence. The town is dense, crowded, especially along the shore where everybody makes a living with the sea, whether raider or fisherman. The nicer houses overlook the harbor, and the cheaper ones are squeezed behind them in muddy, ill-maintained roads. When out at sea, young Ulfin, who crew a lot of the longboats and fishing vessels, tend to live in large communal halls called hearths. Typically has about 20 people, and it keeps the density of the city high. A non-Ulfin that visits here, well, you can expect it to be unfriendly at best. Young Ulfin, who make up the raiding parties, they get into brawl fights. These brawls can turn deadly quick. And of course, much of this danger can dissipate if you have a display of prowess and ruthlessness. So if you're planning to spend some time in the city, slay a monster. Or defeat and befriend a brawler, just to be on the safe side. Weather itself? Well, the weather is unfriendly also. It's on the steaming sea. Storms roll in frequency. Harbor does a good job of protecting against the violent winds and squalls, but the higher places of the city are exposed. So, weather, windborne look marks a lot of residents of there. And if you aren't chapped by the salty winds, you're an outsider. Some other important places to talk about before we talk about the other city. High Point Tower, an abandoned tower that was once used to overlook a lot of the region. It was eventually abandoned because it really wasn't... Its job could be handled elsewhere. In Argos, so the tower has been abandoned in the wilds. Orthos is an important place to mention because it's known as the Island of the Dead. Basically, this is where a lot of the people of Broken Bay are burned. That's a very important thing. Basically, successful raiders, people that are very important, when they die, they get the hero's bird on a burning ship. Everybody else can't afford the ships. You get buried in Orthos. So, yeah. Monuments ranging from headstones to small stone cairns and more elaborate mausoleums and vaults color the northern edge. Farther south, traditional resting place becomes scarce, and most of the island is untracked wasteland. There's a lot of uneasy spirits and dangerous undead. So, priests from the nearby city of Skoldramore talk about he basically tried to best to keep things in control. Rivenstone is a bunch of towering spires in the region. Deadly mountains, peaks. They basically rise from one of the deepest valleys in the seabed floor. And, dangerous place to go to. Similarly speaking, dangerous places to go to are the Sunken City, a legendary city known as Udal Mian from ancient Thassalon, beneath the waves. And the Thancris Mausoleum, which was also once an ancient Thessalonian structure that was turned into a mausoleum for the ancient kings of Broken Bay. And when one of them was possessed by a demon, became a horrible monstrosity, and murdered all its people in possession, turned them into undead, the place was soon ruined. Speaking of ancient kings, we should mention those. I was going to mention them earlier, but I talked about good old Ingimundr. But we do know about some of the other rulers of Broken Bay. We know about 2 of them. Around 1677, when Broken Bay was founded along with built, Einorak Stormbreaker was the figure which basically was the first king of Broken Bay in that area. And was a famous raider in his right. We know then the kings were, of course, buried in the mausoleum up until about around 2277, at least before then, when Kemik Quicktongue was the king. Kemik Quicktongue is the king that was buried in the Thainrest Mausoleum and became possessed by a demon. His corpse was. So, yeah, after that, the kings and Linnorm Kings, as they became, were buried in Heroes Grove. So, final city to talk about before we finish up today, we got to talk about Skoldramore. southern tip of Aragos, it's a whaling town. It has a small region of arable land that produces a lot of the grains of Aragos. Agos. Butchering the name of that constantly this episode. The people here are basically the ones that keep the lore and legends of Orthos, Funeral Island. Expeditions to Orthos first stop here, where the clerics of Gorum hold ceremonies to prepare the dead for a passage to the afterlife. The clerics accompany the group of mourners as they travel to the island to bury their dead, and both the aid and rituals and protect the mourners from the restless dead that dwell on the island. It looks like a fortress more than a traditional town. It's built on a steep bluff and surrounded by ancient thick stone walls. The harbor is small and built to serve as whaling and fishing boats. It's ruled by Eric Grimfire, a cleric of Gorum, whose ancestors have held sway in the town for centuries. They're renowned in Ulfin lands for their skill in fighting and warding off the undead, and individual Cairn guards that he's trained to find their way to a lot of other areas, aiding the living throughout Avestan. He secretly disapproves of the current Linnorm Kings' lust for war and raiding, but because he sees the destruction of both cities, built and his own, Skuldrimor, as an inevitable result of such actions. It's a different world from the old-timey raiders of old, and, Eric understands that, which his king doesn't, but does know his place, and basically he just focuses on protecting the people of Broken Bay with food, and honor protecting the dead. He knows he's not in a position to oppose the Linnorm King. So, he basically disapproves of it, is doing his best to mitigate the problems with it, but heck, it's a problem. It's a problem. But yes, that's what we know about Broken Bay. At least of, unfortunately, approximately 4711. So this is like 14 years ago. We haven't heard any major changes in Lands of Linnorm Kings, and especially with Broken Bay. But we can assume that things in tensions have been rising more and more. We get pictures of certain other kingdoms that are a lot more up to date. But again, it's like most of the regions, we have these pictures and snapshots of them from Golarion lore and lore that Paizo has published. And since we haven't had another Linnorm Kings book, we can't see what's happening in these kingdoms. And the fact is, most of these kingdoms have maybe not had a major update since this time period. 14 years is still plenty of time for Ingimundr to rule. It's an interesting place, and it does have this juxtaposition with the other island nation in the Ironbound Isles, being that the Ironbound Isles is seeking this way to balance out tradition with new, and evolving Ulfin culture into something that's much more connected with the rest of the world. While Broken Bay is seeking to regress Ulfin culture back to the very traditional ways, the old ways of raiding, when that was what was needed to survive. Again, it's a regression to very ancient ways, very violent ways, and their leader is encouraging it openly, secretly at the same time, encouraging it in ways that, is he can deny things. He's got probable deniability. He says, I can encourage them to go raid you. They just did. I encourage them to be more traditional. I encourage them to be warriors. But the warriors don't want to go fishing. What are they to do? It's an interesting place. But it's a place that ultimately, perhaps, Eric was right, will lead to the destruction of Broken Bay, if something doesn't happen. But for now, Linnorm King, Ingimundr the Unruly, is in charge. And you can see the directions. And that'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed diving into Broken Bay. I think that looking at each of the Land of Linnorm Kings is a very practical thing, because we can see that each of them is uniquely different and has this snapshot of the Ulfin culture in their own ways that make them quite fascinating. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to do these episodes on their own, and I hope you're enjoying it. Please do remember to check out the rest of my stuff. Whether it's joining me live over on Twitch. If you're joining me there, cool, thumbs up. Say hi in chat. You can always join me live when I record most of my tabletop stuff there. I also have things like live plays of Pathfinder 2e in Fall of Avenswell, which is at Wednesdays at 8, and a discussion show, podcasting kind of thing, Saturdays at 6, discussing tabletop, where we dive into big news of the week in the tabletop world, and some interesting deeper discussion topics where we kind of dive into concepts in tabletop that might help you out in your games and gaming and stuff like that. Please feel free to check out all my social media link below. And if you can't join me live, over to the YouTube side of things. The YouTube side of things, that's where all my tabletop stuff is uploaded. All the gaming and stuff, I'll have to put a lot of time together at some point in time. But you can always check that out there too. But on YouTube, please do remember, things with PC algorithm. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. And of course, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. How do you think, in the 14 years since the book was published, because time matches there, when it was 2011 for us, the book came out, 4711, it's 4725 in the Pathfinder world. How do you think, or 2025 here, how do you think 4725 broke in Vegas? Has this 14 years led to more downfall? Has it fixed some problems? How is this clash between just trying to truly dive into the traditional, really traditional elfin culture versus the new one? No, how do you think of it? Let me know. Or if you have any adventures in it. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Please check out the rest of my stuff. And until the next time we dive into Pathfinder, Golarion, other worlds out there in role-playing games, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.